All right, Jerry. Question one is not original by any means, but it opens up great conversation. What is your franchise story? How did you fall into franchising?
Oh, well, that's a good question. A lot of it came back to, well, I didn't get an MBA. I wanted to go to MBA school, and I decided that buying a franchise was a good way to learn how to run a business. And so I was in software engineering before that, and my degree was in chemistry. So I got laid off, and then it was I looking for jobs on Monster back in the 20 years ago, and it was and one of the TES consultants, connected, through that, and that's kind of where it started. I ended up buying another franchise that wasn't one of the recommendations.
Hmm.
It was one that I knew from some local, local brand. And anyway, that's where I started. It was a burrito shop. So, so I just went into that, and then it kind of morphed, as time went on.
How many units did you climb to as a
I just
franchisee?
had, I just had one. We actually bought a really tough location, but we had too much space, and that's where Sub Zero kind of came into play because everybody asked for, um, well, we just needed more revenue, and we had major construction in front of the store for 4 years. So we knew that, about 6 months after we opened, we realized that was a mistake, not checking with the city to see what was going to be happening.
Right.
They expanded like the lanes, the highway to 6 lanes, and going both directions. So it was 4 years of literal construction right in front of your building. So it was, so we had extra space. You got to do what you got to do. So I thought we thought we were going to lease it, and became pretty clear it wasn't going to release, that extra space. So we just decided to add a product. And in Utah, there was a brand called Hoagie Yogi, and it started around BYU. It was pretty successful for a while, for about 20 years. But it was yogurt and hoagies, and then they added teriyaki sticks. So they had this kind of weird mix. But people always said, "Well, why don't you do that? Just add ice cream." And I said, "Well, I don't know anything about ice cream." So that's where it. And then we really couldn't afford the freezers um, to build an ice cream shop. We went to the ice cream manufacturer. They said, "Don't do ice cream if you're already in a struggling location." They said, "Do something else, or do something." Well, they gave one caveat. They said you could do ice cream as long as it's different. So it's got to be really unique, and that's where kind of the really unique came into play.
How long did you hold on to that franchise as a franchisee for?
We were there about 6 years.
So I mean, you
So
held on. I mean, even with all the storms that you had to face, you didn't just quit.
yeah, we built that, the Sub-Zero store that made it so we were making half of our revenue from one side and half the revenue from the other, and and it and then um I probably would I mean the landlord came in and informed us at the end of our lease that he was going to double the rent, and I was like, well, okay, then I'm out. And there was also a time we'd already built our second store for the ice cream.
Mm-hmm.
So it was now time to focus on that. And and the other thing is that I was in the National Guard, so I was being deployed for um crap.
We can still Jerry. You're still good. You can keep going. You can still hear us. Sometimes the technical
Oh,
issues step in. Jerry's gone. Well, we'll continue Jerry's story in a second. I guess that's the challenge with doing these live. If the internet's not working very good, then I need to take over. Let's see. He's trying, looking at
Think.
it. There you are. Now you're back. Are you back, Jerry?
Yeah, everything rebooted. The app. Yeah.
All
Let
right,
me
you're
make
back. All
sure.
right,
Yep,
so
I'm back.
all right, so you're
Can you
talking
hear me?
about you were talking about you got deployed, you were in the military. Keep going from there.
Yeah. While I was gone, we actually we had the second store that was built. I also, when I came back, I really found that the employees were stealing a lot of money. There was a lot of the deposits just were gone. They're missing. They were fishing them out of the drop box. And after a while, I of trying to fix that. I was like, the landlord's raised my lease. I know I don't want to. This isn't where the future is with the burrito shop. So it's just move on to the just ice cream only and move down to the second store. And then at that point in time, we'd had enough. We'd been doing the ice cream for 4 years. So we actually had 4 franchisees that opened that same year. So we built 4 stores in that first year into the second store.
All right, so go backwards. So you burrito shop's going. Is it called Sub-Zero from the start?
No, it's called New York Burrito. But then what I was doing is I came across when I knew we were going to do ice cream. But it had to be different. I went to the customer and I said, what do you like about other people's product? And then how do you make it better? So I went through this survey process to determine what the product was going to be. And so what everybody came back with was one thing. They said customization. They wanted a custom product per person. So whether that's mix in, that's what people's biggest impression is, like I customize by adding a mix in like Cold Stone or by adding it on top.
Right.
But my thought was how do you do it better? And so the only way to do it better, in my opinion, is to change the flavor. The only way to change the flavor is to start as a liquid. So that was the definition, is we got to start with a liquid. So the only way you can't put a flavor in a solid. You can only put a flavor in a liquid. And so that's the definition of the product, is it had to start with a liquid, change the flavor. It's all custom made per order. But I didn't know how to do it. And my wife left this. So that was the question. I was like, how are we going to do this? And so just went down the, very open of what we're going to do. And then my wife left an article about liquid nitrogen on the, in the bathroom out open. She thought I might think it was interesting. And anyway, I just was instantaneous. My degree's in chemistry, so it was kind of instantaneous. That's exactly what we're going to do. So then it just went through, started in the research. Now remember, I couldn't afford freezers to bring in ice cream. I didn't have the capital or even the credit. So but I could afford a military surplus liquid nitrogen tank. So that's where it started and I still use that tank for catering. So I use it quite a bit. So anyway, it started all with all of our original equipment, because in fact, when going back to that time period, there weren't the delivery mechanisms for liquid nitrogen for stores like you have now. Like the other people in the marketplace, they had the benefit of the fact that the equipment's available to them. It wasn't until about 2007 that liquid nitrogen was even would be delivered, because the equipment just didn't exist, from the welding supply places. So it was really kind of we were very early stage. I used to drive down to the and drive back. So it's so there it's back. So I would go down to Praxair and drive back, and my nitrogen tanks in the back of my little truck they vent, and so when they do that, they give off a cloud, and so people would be like driving up next to me going, "Hey," I'd say, "Hey, your tank's gonna blow," and what you can't really talk to somebody in the next lane over,
Right.
so I'm just like, "Yeah," and I'm like, "Thumbs up," and I'm like, so they just think I'm crazy, but it was but then I bought this military surplus 400-gallon tank, and this is again before um, any of the stuff that's available now was available, and I got it out of the Redstone Arsenal. And because I was in the National Guard, I actually looked up this receipt that the military paid for this tank, and so which was interesting. Um, but it usually stuff that comes out of the military surplus, a lot of that stuff's just scrap. It doesn't really work. And luckily, everything was intact on this tank. So I built a trailer, and then I would go down to Air Liquide, and I'd drive into the plant, and I'd pick it up and take it back. And it was so it was early stage was there was a lot of work. But then once it became 2008, then things were you know able to be delivered um, into stores. Then it made it a lot easier.
All right. So test concept. You build it in the burrito. What is it? Did you name it at first, or was it just part of the burrito
Yeah, it
brand?
was called Sub-Zero. So
It was
what we
called
did
something.
is what I did is part of that surveying process is I asked people. I had like 10 names, and one of them was Sub-Zero. And what I learned from New York Burrito is New York Burrito really should have been called deli style wraps. And they on their website even they talked about this. They said, well, New York means deli and burrito means wraps.
Hmm.
Well, the problem was that nobody could make the leap. And what I learned is my original the um, the original name was Sub-Zero Cryo Creamery because I was trying to play off on the cryogenics.
Right.
And I figured there was enough people that had watched science fiction movies that they knew what cryo meant. Well, the fact is they didn't.
Right.
And so what I learned from New York Burrito and really from this was that you had to make the name dead simple. You have to tell people right out what it is. It's Sub-Zero ice cream. And through the naming, what we found is that from that surveying, Sub-Zero came on top as far as the survey, and then, but there were two reasons. They said it was because it was familiar, and so I said, well, but it all depended on what generation you were from. So if you were older generation, it was because of the refrigerator, but if it was younger generation, it was because of Mortal Kombat.
Interesting.
And recently, we actually have had interactions with Mortal Kombat as a brand, and so so we'll probably be doing some Mortal Kombat flavors. We went down and met with their marketing team a few weeks ago,
Nice.
and so it's kind of funny that that's I figured familiarity would be a benefit.
All right. So concepts going. You're getting early sales. I assume
Mm-hmm.
what you could afford changes, and now you have to afford the process of becoming a franchisor. How did you do that?
Well, we hired a company, and they did the initial paperwork. Um, it wasn't terribly expensive. We were also applying for a patent, so we were paying for that too. Um, in that time period, which we did get. Um, so um, but I was doing a lot of that work myself. The so we hired this initial company. They didn't do a great job So we moved over to I was getting deployed again in 2010. So we brought on a partner. They helped us rework a lot of the manuals, and then we separated in 2012. Um, and so we've been on our own since. Um, so it was the question was like, how did I afford it? I'm not sure if
Or
I.
what was the?
Um,
No, it's more of the more of the process. Like you
oh
decide you're going to do this, you just
well,
continue to reinvest in this and say, I'm going to franchise the business.
yeah. I mean, originally people came to us, so we didn't really have to market to those original franchisees. Um, so they just saw us, in the store, started asking about it. Um, I learned I've learned a lot since then. We were probably, um, but anyway, but the point of the matter is that it's, it's all a learning process anyway.
Yeah.
Early franchises are, very difficult. And there's a lot of work to do. And even now we have 30 stores, but we're very lean. We do a lot of the work. We do the on-site training. We do the training in here. We still work the store. So it's but I always felt like you had to work in the store. So you keep in touch with the customer and what the franchisees are going through. So I've had a strong belief in that. Um, my kids work in the store. Um, so it's so I the answer is I knew it was going to be a franchise because I knew I wasn't going to be able to raise the money to be able to build stores myself. There just wasn't enough. I just didn't see a path for banking, and I knew that the only way to really grow was franchising.
All right, so go back to the moment you've made your decision that you're going to become a franchise, and now you've had, you're still successful as a business. If you flash forward to today, but how have your expectations been met or haven't been met? What did you expect out of franchise, and where did you think you were going to be at today, if you
Well,
had a backcast?
I have a very different perspective of franchising now than I did then, which is you would expect.
Yeah.
Um, it's a lot more difficult when you don't have total control of a store, to be able to walk in and say this is what you need to do. So there's the amount of revenue that you get as a franchisor is, early on, is not enough to pay for all the services you really need to provide.
Yeah.
So it's a difficult balance, and it's a different mindset. That it's a very difficult mindset to flip back and forth from the franchisor side to the franchisee side. Because your customer is the franchisee, but your end customer is the people that walk in the store.
Right.
So keeping that, the expectation of the customer high and the franchisee's expectation high is difficult. But it's just um I wouldn't say I think if I had we don't I like the EOS system, that methodology.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm a visionary, but we could benefit from an operator or a what do they call it,
Integrator.
integrator.
Yeah.
So but you gotta grow to that, and let's get to that point. Anyway, but my I think early on I felt like there was like, well, you get royalties and therefore it's just easy, but it's just not, because there's for those that the amount of royalties, there's just a lot of work to keep those stores
You go back
going.
to day one. Are you dreaming of 100 units? Are you dreaming of 1,000 units? Do you have some sort of dream that you had at that time, that when obviously reality takes shape as an emerging franchisor, but did you have a giant dream that you had from an expectation standpoint?
Yeah, I'd figured we'd eventually grow to, 500 to 1,000 units. Um, which I still think that, we'll eventually get there. It's just a matter of time. I think breaking that ceiling of 100 units is the major milestone.
Yeah.
Um, and that's probably the most difficult thing. I think it probably gets easier after that. I think you can make big mistakes when you get big, and then you shrink, dramatically. Um, but so I think that my opinion was fast growth wasn't necessarily good growth, um, because but slow growth can also be problematic. Um, but you can grow. I mean, I've seen brands where they just grow like wildfire. Um, New York Burrito was one of those. It grew like, I mean, the publications I heard said that it grew to 100 units. But by the time I was in, it was down to 22. But everything, back then you didn't have really up to date information. It was still semi print, or the things weren't updated.
Right.
So we were down to 22, and we were the last one in Utah. So there were 11 stores when we started in Utah, and by the time we ended, we were the last ones. So so you can grow too fast, but you can also grow too slow. So getting that balance is, I think, important.
Of your 30 locations now, do you have multi-unit franchisees? Are they just owning one? What's the
Most
persona of your buyer?
most of them are single owners. There's about half a dozen that are multi-unit. Um, um, and they do well as multi-unit. Multi-unit's I encourage people, like, if you're going to do it, just, you really need to have multi-unit. You could make it on one store, but
Right.
it's a lot more work for the money.
Are you doing an earnings claim?
We do have an earnings claim. I have not. I don't know if I think it's a great earnings claim. I'll be honest.
Yeah.
We have stores that do really well, and we have stores that I'm not very good at cracking down. Like, everybody's afraid of, like, the big bad franchisor, and I'm not that guy. So I have older stores that probably shouldn't be around, that underperform.
I mean, that's part of the learnings, right? I mean, when you're you're still an emerging brand that definitely has its sea legs behind it. I mean, part of that is learning experiences as you go. I mean, from where I stand, if I had to evaluate, what is going to be the difference between this hitting 100 units and not, if I zoom out and I'm advising you, one is going to be capital. I mean, right now in franchising world, the best and strongest capitalized businesses have an advantage, whether they have a strong earnings claim or not, whether the cost to get in is sound. Capital can create explosion. And so if I zoom out, I can see the space that you're in, what you occupy. I've had your product. There's one right by our house in Atlanta.
Yeah.
And so I've seen it.
Yeah, that's a good store.
Yeah. And good location. It's got good solid foot traffic. It's placed right by a Target. So, like, the franchise operator in that scenario said, I'm going to invest probably a little bit more in real estate to be in the right area. And so, but if I zoom out and you said, Nick, buy my brand and fix this. One, your story is buried. Two, your message, and I always say this, I think positioning is more important than tactics. If you don't have your position down, then you could spend money on digital ads. It won't do anything for you. And right now you have, for those with an appetite for success, but I could take any brand and say that's their why now. And from me, I think your why you why now is you saw what it was like to be a franchisee with a brand that didn't have structure. And you take your military background and then what you majored in, military background gave you structure, and what you majored in gave you a passion for building something different in a category that was already crowded. You have the recipe for success. I think you've got to be a little bit more bullish on telling that story from where I sit.
Yeah.
So, Jerry, what I'd like to close with is there's a ghost prospect out there. Maybe they know you, maybe they don't. Maybe they've watched this. They're intrigued by what they see on the screen. What's the final thing you want them to know about why they should go ahead and fill out that form and reach out to you? Jerry, did that come through?
Yeah, I don't know why it's buffering. I'm going to try and close some stuff down and see if there's something on my side.
The last question is what do you
Probably
want
should
the
have
ghost
done it.
what do you want the ghost prospect
anyway,
to know about the business?
Apologize for that.
Oh, you're good. Can you hear me now, Jerry?
Yeah, I can hear you.
So tell the ghost candidate why you, why now.
Why pick Sub-Zero?
Yep, that's right.
Is that what you're asking?
That's right.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you gotta love ice cream, so if you're not really an ice cream person, I probably wouldn't pick our product. So you gotta, first of all, when I picked New York burritos, because I really like burritos, even though they really weren't burritos, they were kind of wraps, but they had enough, spice that I liked it. So you got to love the product. So first of all, second thing is you got to really like the business model. The business model is really what differentiates us from anything else out there. For instance, like with using nitrogen, we don't have freezers. So you don't have a lot of mechanical problems or mechanical um, costs. You don't have a lot of electrical costs. You don't going mobile. So I look at, and then the other thing is I would say if you're going to come into a franchise, you really need to follow the whole program. In other words, a lot of our franchisees, we found 96% of our franchisees don't do catering, but uh, so 6% is 94. 96% of our franchisees do 95% of the catering. So catering is, when I look at ice cream, and I've reviewed this with other brands, and is really you have ice cream makes, I don't want to make an earnings claim, but my impression from talking to other brands is that, and I think this matches up with every experience I've had, is that there's a certain percentage that's in the store. There's a certain percentage that's out of that store, and then ancillary products like cakes and other products. So, for instance, if you're not going to do catering, you're leaving all the profit off the table. You're 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 just not. You're just saying, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to leave that money out there. So I have um um I figure about 30 to 40% of ice cream sales across the industry, not just us, is cakes or catering. Um, so if you're not going to do the program, then you need to accept the results. Um, so if you do the program, you'll make money. Um, so I just made an earnings claim. Dang it. But you know what I mean. I mean, it's what I say that. I mean, really, what I mean by that is like the franchisee has to. Um, they've got to do the success is up to the franchisee. There's nothing I can do, after you open your store to go in and really make a needle change other than what the franchisee is doing. If the franchisee is not working the store, if he's not taking care of his customers, if he's not taking care of the employees, if he's not taking care of the store, it's not going to do well. So I think you got to love the product. Number one, you got to recognize the difference in the brand or the business model, because our business model is, I took ice cream down to the Sony gaming event in Vegas. And so for the Mortal Kombat guys, I just brought a tank into the convention center and a table and set it up and started making ice cream for them. So I traveled 300 miles, and made, 200 ice creams right out of my minivan. So the mobility of it is tremendous. I mean, could you imagine doing that with traditional ice cream? You couldn't do it.
Well, look, I mean, at the end of the day, you have a beautiful product. There's bendability and flexibility. You've shown scale in the model that you've put together, and it's a buyer that has decided this is the category they want to be in, that wants to follow a system and can buy into your vision. This could be the right brand for you, and I think that's important to note. And so, Jerry, we've hit our time, so I got to close this out. But I have subzerofranchise.com up on the screen. It went fast, 30 minutes fast. So for more information, go to subzerofranchise.com. For Jerry, I'm Nick. This is another episode of Meet the Zor.
Hey, thanks.